The State Transport Leasing Company, also known as GTLK, has recently been assigned by the Russian government the responsibility of creating new financial and operational leasing models that are specifically designed for Russian-built aircraft. The objective of this directive is to ease the financial burden on Russian airlines by suggesting that they extend their lease terms from 7 to 10 years, with an optional additional year for the remarketing of the aircraft. As per the Transportation Ministry's meeting, which was reported by the pro-Kremlin daily Izvestia in mid-2025, the leasing arrangements are only economically viable if the full purchase price of these domestic aircraft is financed by Russia's National Welfare Fund, a sovereign wealth fund. The proposal from GTLK requires a 2-year upfront payment and a 20-year fund commitment. It also underscores the importance of maintaining aircraft prices at a level comparable to foreign counterparts, in order to guarantee financial sustainability and comparable returns to the National Welfare Fund. This action highlights the efforts of Russian government agencies to create a leasing system that supports the country's goal of replacing imported aircraft in the face of tough sanctions and economic challenges. Today, the cost of leasing aircraft in Russia is mainly influenced by 2 key factors. The first is the need to replace foreign-made planes. The second is the significant financial support from the Russian government to help with this replacement. Since the implementation of international sanctions in response to Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Russian airlines have been prohibited from purchasing, leasing, or maintaining aircraft from Western manufacturers, including Boeing and Airbus. This embargo has compelled Russia to rapidly shift its focus toward the development and expansion of its domestic aircraft fleet, a transition filled with economic and production obstacles. The underperformance and excessive costs of domestic aircraft production are the fundamental issues. Achieving projected output levels or cost efficiencies has been a challenge for Russian aviation manufacturers, resulting in costly and delayed deliveries of new aircraft. The data from 2025 indicates that Russian manufacturers intended to deliver 15 commercial aircraft. However, they were only able to deliver 1 during the year. This deficit directly results from sanctions that limit access to critical foreign components and discourage investment due to high interest rates. Because of problems in production and the challenges of replacing Western parts with local ones, making a Russian aircraft costs much more than making a similar Western aircraft. As a result, the cost of a domestically produced aircraft, such as the MC-21, can be approximately 7.6 billion rubles, equivalent to $96 million. Only market forces can sustain this amount economically. The Russian government has implemented a considerable subsidy program to mitigate this exorbitant expense and increase the demand for domestically manufactured aircraft. The state finances a substantial portion of the aircraft's cost, rather than allowing market forces to determine the price. This intervention is vividly illustrated in the leasing arrangements for the MC-21, where Aeroflot, Russia's premier carrier, benefits from a state-backed subsidized lease rate as low as 1.5% annually. Commercial aircraft typically have much higher lease rates, which reflect the lessor's profit margins, maintenance expenses, and asset cost. In this case, the state provides low-interest financing from the National Wealth Fund or other state mechanisms, thereby reducing the lease payments that airlines are required to make. The Russian-built aircraft are made more appealing to airlines by this artificially low lease rate, which creates an illusion of financial viability, despite their high production costs and potential performance concerns. Dissecting the economic model reveals a vertically integrated subsidy cycle. The manufacturer's actual cost remains high as a result of inefficient production and supply chain constraints. The government injects direct subsidies that account for the gap between the real cost of the aircraft and a reduced directive price that is more appropriate for airline affordability. The MC-21 serves as an illustration of this gap, which is approximately 4.4 billion rubles or $55 million per aircraft. This subsidy is further enhanced by the provision of affordable financing to leasing companies, which acquire the aircraft at the subsidized price and lease them to airlines at an exceptionally low rate. Domestic carriers can operate these aircraft without incurring unsustainable expenses, as they only pay a small portion of the actual cost. This closed-loop system effectively maintains the operation of Russian aircraft by circumventing the basic principles of market economics. However, it imposes a significant financial burden on the government. The economics of the MC-21 leasing clearly illustrate the situation in terms of numbers. The government underwrites approximately 4.4 billion rubles, or $55 million, per aircraft to reduce the price to around 3.2 billion rubles, or $40 million, for domestic carriers. Although the true production cost is approximately 7.6 billion rubles, or $96 million, an airline pays approximately 48 million rubles, or $610,000 per year. This equals a total of approximately 720 million rubles, or $9 million, over a 15-year lease term, at the subsidized 1.5% annual lease rate. The government must absorb the remaining amount, which constitutes a significant subsidy, either directly or indirectly, by foregoing potential interest income. This equates to a multi-billion ruble fiscal outlay per aircraft. This model, while politically and strategically motivated to preserve Russia's aviation sovereignty and capacity, lacks economic sustainability. The sanctions have also significantly disrupted Russia's access to global aircraft leasing and insurance markets, further worsening these challenges. Foreign lessors leased more than half of Russia's commercial fleet before the sanctions were implemented. Nevertheless, the absence of a consistent supply of components has resulted in the termination of leasing agreements by international lessors. Aircraft have been grounded or cannibalized for parts. Insurance coverage for these aircraft has also become contentious, as rulings have restricted compensation and coverage under so-called war risk insurance policies due to geopolitical risks. These factors further isolate Russian airlines from global aviation ecosystems and increase the pressure to rely solely on domestic production and leasing mechanisms supported by state intervention. In the future, the economic trajectory of Russia's aircraft leasing strategy will depend on the industry's capacity to reduce production costs, enhance management, and build a competitive supply chain to lessen its dependence on subsidies. Russia can expect the Sberbank audit to motivate reforms that prioritize transparency, accountability, and better resource allocation. Alternatively, the country risks continuing to invest billions in a system that yields minimal returns and slows its efforts to modernize its civil aviation fleet independently. Undeniably, the Russian government's strategy prioritizes aviation autonomy despite the significant economic and industrial obstacles. The intricate financing plan, however, highlights the delicate balance between geopolitical necessity and economic viability. Unless significant improvements in production efficiency and reductions in subsidization are made, the Russian aircraft leasing ecosystem may experience ongoing instability that will restrict development and innovation in its civil aviation sector for years to come. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, please take our channel membership, which is very affordable, to encourage us.